In the past, to get into the best magic academy, students had to fight monsters, and if they failed, they faced death. Nowadays, mages have become very weak and spoiled, and the worst consequence of failure is a bad grade on a written test. However, even with a written test, all of the top students failed, except for one, the protagonist of this story, Rin. He was the first in the academy's history to receive the highest grade S. He managed to shock his strict professor and the entire class with his runes. Thanks to his deep understanding of magic, Rin combined simple runes in such a way that a star appeared in the classroom. He's a genius among these losers for a reason. He is, in fact, a regressor. 300 years ago, he was a young and powerful mage. At 13 years old, he had already achieved extraordinary power, and a hero came to visit him in the magic tower. Lista can't resist the temptation to jokingly ask Rin if he's the same magic genius she's heard about. Rin ignores her, walking over to the nearby bookshelf, making Lista wonder if he's really the youngest 4-star great mage. However, judging by his appearance and size, he's just a normal, bratty kid. Lista gets a little closer, wanting to know if he actually heard her, but this time Rin remains silent. After a while, he states that he's not a genius or a child, but just Rin. Lista rejoices, as he is indeed the chosen one, a young archmage in the Empire's history. However, even though she was in the right place, that boy was just a child in front of her, and she couldn't bring herself to call him Rin, the genius mage, while he still needed his diapers changed, and this irritates Rin even more. So, without warning, Rin turns around and casts a fireball. The intensity of the spell makes the books fall from the bookshelf, right on Lista's head, who quickly apologizes to the mage. Watching all this, Rin can't hold back his laughter seeing the book fall on top of Lista. Lista also lets out a little laugh, since she at least managed to make the grumpy kid laugh. With that, she introduces herself as a self-proclaimed warrior from the Church of the Radiant Dragon. She invites him to join her in the fight against the Abyss approaching Antarctica. And that obviously means he needs to join her party called the Heroes Party. She has already recruited two rather famous people, the renowned archer of the Empire, Gongon Kaed, and Pride, the priestess of the Fire Dragon from the Dragon Republic. Upon hearing all this, Rin rejects the offer, stating that he doesn't want to die. Lista agrees with him. After all, who wants to die? However, she's a bit surprised when he asks if the other two party members are as fun as she is. Obviously, the question was so funny that she started laughing, promising that they are 10 times more fun. But she tells him there's something even more fun than them, the world. Someone like Rin, who broke free from the slums and was determined to learn magic inside the magic tower, saw the reality in her words. His goal was to become the pinnacle of the Empire's magical community, a 7-star mage recognized by the Empire. It was said that those who reached the 7-star level would be able to see the reality of the world, and Rin wanted to do that. To master 7-star magic, he obviously needed to study, but he also needed to experience the outside world. Rin always wondered what the point of studying was when he didn't have a specific goal, but it was then that this eccentric and clumsy warrior approached him. Without a doubt, it was an unexpected offer, but this offer would allow him to unravel the outside world he was unfamiliar with, even though he had no desire to save it. Even so, he decided to accept the offer because, in his opinion, what's the worst that could happen? Little did he know that his entire perception would change in a short time. After joining the Heroes Party, Rin met the other members. P was an archer, but his hands were only steady when he was drunk. Without alcohol in his system, he couldn't perform any movements with his bow. On the other hand, Pride, who was the priestess, despite her title, was a chain smoker who laughed after blowing out a puff of smoke while they were in a forest. A monster attacked them. Despite their vices, they were all exceptional in skill and power. As the journey continued, with powerful strikes and charges, they defeated countless monsters and strange creatures they encountered on their path in mere seconds. As they advanced, the bond between them strengthened, and in the blink of an eye, 5 years passed, filled with beautiful memories. However, something happened, an unfortunate event that no one expected or wanted. As the four of them continued their journey to protect the world and reach the final chapter, something happened to Rin's body. It happened because of the constant battles over the 5 years. Just before the final battle, Rin was on the verge of death. He was dying from a terrible poison. His life was coming to an end, and there was nothing that could be done. Lista refused to give up. She desperately wanted to do something, but at that moment there was nothing left that could break the curse. Everyone wept bitterly for their dying companion. as this affliction was incurable. However, Lista still wanted Rin to hold on. She didn't want to let him go, but Rin, with his weak voice, assured them not to worry and lifted his shirt, revealing a seal he had created himself. It was a divine reversal shield. The immortality spell inscribed over Rin's heart was a spell that would freeze his body in a dormant state and then heal it completely. Although he had no idea how long it would take to revive before casting it, he looked at everyone, assuring them he would surely return. With little choice, he activated the spell, and Rin's body began to freeze while everyone cried for him. Before freezing completely, Rin gives Lista a warm smile, making her swear that she will win before the darkness envelops him. They both promise to meet again as he closes his eyes. Lista murmurs about staying by his side until he wakes up. The darkness envelops him, and his consciousness is pulled into the coldness of death. Meanwhile, the three members of Rin's party fight against the abyss. In an instant, he finds himself in the body of a 9-year-old boy with his mother. A mother, something he never had as he was an orphan, but now he is with his mother, who seems worried. At the same time, Rin is perplexed, his mind filled with thoughts, trying to understand what happened and how he ended up there. Seeing him confused, Rin's mother becomes concerned. She can't understand why her son is acting so strangely. Even though they are in the hero's square in front of the sacred sea, Rin's eyes widen and he freezes because what he's seeing is absolutely unbelievable. It's the statue commemorating Lista's party. The statue is a memorial that indicates the lifespans of his allies. To understand what is happening, he asks his mother about the current year, and his mother is obviously confused by the strange question. However, when she reveals that it's the year 1418, it feels like the ground has fallen out from under him as he absorbs the news. He realizes that more than 200 years have passed since his allies' deaths. He's confused whether he was reborn or if his memories were transferred to someone else's body, but whatever happened is simply unbelievable. Rin begins to remember the mannerisms and memories of his allies, Lista's laughter, Kai's drunken ramblings, and the smoke from Pride's cigarette. Realizing that all these memories are from 300 years ago leaves him speechless. Although one thing was confirmed, they had won the final battle, because if they hadn't won, there wouldn't be a statue of them standing there before him. Instantly, all his thoughts were interrupted when Rin's worried mother wanted to know why he was asking something so obvious. Adding that she felt sorry for the 4 members of the hero party, she revealed the rumors about Rin's frozen body in the tower. This made Rin understand that he had possessed someone's body. Furthermore, he laughed with a sense of relief as his mother told him how Lista remained by his side until the very end. This reminded him of how Lista promised to stay by his side until her last breath, and she kept her promise, just as she had said she would. Walking towards the monument, he reached out his hand and touched it. The tears he had been holding back now streamed down his face. Pain and guilt were etched on his face. He couldn't keep his promise. The promise he made to his allies was broken. Rin didn't know what the 3 of them had said about him, but whatever it was, it made him famous, and now he was a part of history. The Emperor of the Empire personally erected a monument in his honor, and many magic towers and mage families revered him as a saint. Now, the only things left of him from 300 years ago are the magic he used, the memories of his travels to many places, and finally, the faces of his allies who smiled in his recollections, who became legends instead of mere memories. He remembers how Lista once told him that moments only become memories when shared with someone. So, Rin's memories aren't real memories yet, until he dies and meets them again. Until then, he'll have to live with these memories alone. In that instant, his thoughts turn to his mother. Rin is at home reading a magic book, and his mother comes up from behind with tea. Rin accepts the tea, thinking about what he should do with his life now, but that's when something clicks in his mind, and he remembers that he still needs to do something. The Sacred Human Empire divided the mage class into 7 levels. The level he reached was 5-star. And in history, only 2 people have reached the 6-star level or higher, being known as sages. It can be said they reached the ultimate truth. The fact is that if he had rejected Lista's proposal, he would have been one of them to reach the 6-star level before dying of old age. But even after reaching that level, he would regret his life's decisions. Now, if someone could turn back time, he would still go on that journey over and over again with her. You've watched the video this far and still haven't subscribed to the channel? What's that about, bro? You're slacking, huh? Come on, my guy, hit subscribe and make me super happy. But Lista is gone. He remembers her laughter and wishes the world were full of laughter and wonder. If the world they fought to protect was really as she envisioned it, he remembers how people say that those who reach the pinnacle of magic, the ultimate truth, can see the true nature of the world. So, with that thought in mind, Rin promises himself that in this life, he will become a 7-star mage and will not give up, no matter how empty he feels. Flashbacks haunt him. Lista, with a warm smile, suggested visiting the flower field with a playful tone, saying it was too romantic and he preferred to read a magic book since he saw nothing interesting in the flower field. The party members were cheerful and optimistic, and the journey with them was truly enjoyable. He pushed those thoughts away and decided to say goodbye to all the bittersweet memories, as the dead can only remain in the past. They cannot walk with them, since life goes on, even when loved ones are left behind. With this positive thought in mind, Rin's new life begins. Lista asks Rin if he has ever wished for a family. Rin replies that he hasn't, because he doesn't even know what his mother looks like. He grew up in the northern slums, and if the headmaster of the Osiris school hadn't noticed his magical talent and taken him in, he probably would have lived as an orphan and died on the streets. Pride says that's very sad, but Rin states that even if he had a family, he probably wouldn't know how to deal with them. Lista smiles and tells him not to overthink it, just show a lot of love. Since he's a kind-hearted boy, everything will be fine. That was his memory of the past. Suddenly, a maid enters his room, greets him, and says she's going to prepare breakfast. He gets up and thinks back to 20 days ago, when he recovered the memories of his past life. He was reincarnated into the body of a spoiled 9-year-old young master. This boy named Rin was the eldest son of the Ludwig family, one of the 5 most important magical families in the empire. In his past life, Rin was an orphan, but in this one, he was born into nobility. Adapting to this new life took effort, but he managed. Soon after, Rin finds his mother, who tells him to call his father for breakfast. Smiling, he goes to Kevin Ludwig's office. Kevin asks if Rin slept well, since he doesn't look great. Rin delivers the message about breakfast, and Kevin laughs, asking why he came alone. Afterward, he thanks him and tells him to go eat. Rin, noticing some magic papers on the desk, asks if his father isn't going to eat. Kevin explains that his theory presentation for next week is making him nervous, so he prefers to focus in the morning when his mind is clearer. Rin studies the paper, noticing where Kevin is struggling, and offers to help. Kevin chuckles, asking if Rin is going to give him a pep talk. But Rin says he means helping with the magic circles. Kevin says he would appreciate it, but fears his wife will scold them for skipping breakfast. Rin takes the pen anyway and explains as he takes the principles of nature, converts them into mathematical formulas, distorts them, and adjusts the runes, replacing the rune deposit that conflicts with the rune T with the rune hill, and finally, applying the Empire's formula of 41-2. The solution appears instantly. Beads of sweat form on Kevin's forehead as he stares at the paper with the solution. Not even the greatest scholars in the Empire could solve this problem, but Rin did it so easily. That same high-level spell had been activated 200 years ago, and restoring it could save countless people from natural disasters. Kevin wonders how Rin managed it and where he learned the basics of magic. In theory, Rin should have been a perfectly normal child, but considering his Ludwig lineage, this implied he hadn't inherited any magical talent. When Rin asks if he wants to have dinner with them, Kevin smiles and hugs him warmly. Rin's family was small, his parents and a 6-year-old sister. The little one peeking through the door was Siri. Her black hair shone like silk and her red eyes gleamed. An adorable girl with the Ludwig family's features, just like Rin. When Rin turned to look at her, she ran away. It was no surprise, as in his memories he had never been kind to her, not cruel, just indifferent to everything. He remembers Lista's words, that he was a kind boy who would do good in the world, and calls out to Siri, saying he'll teach her magic. Siri peeks through the door and Rin asks if she wants to play. She runs away again, but soon returns, carrying a book, Basic Formulas for 1-Star Magic. Rin is stunned. She's only 6 years old and already studying this stuff. He remembers Lista treating him like a child and softens. She climbs onto his lap and he asks which part she didn't understand. Then, he asks if she's ever played house. When she nods, Rin explains, a house of straw, a house of bricks. Depending on the materials, the results are different. Magic works the same way. The shape of the magic square determines the attribute. A triangle means fire. A fan means wind. So, the square in your book represents wind magic. The next step, he says, is the runes that determine the spell's effect. Runes are magic words. Yuli means to bind, or means to disperse. For example, engraving Yuli on a triangle creates a fire-binding spell, but the casting itself uses mathematical formulas. When Siri innocently asks what math is, Rin sighs and says she'll need a quadratic equation for Yuli. Pausing, he decides to start with something simpler, like addition and subtraction. From the doorway, their mother and a servant watch. The servant whispers that young Master Rin has completely changed. Before, Siri would cry and he wouldn't care. Since he returned from Vatican Square, even the look in his eyes seems different. Eventually, the two children fall asleep together, and their parents watch tenderly. The mother wishes she could capture the moment in a painting. Although Siri's shyness might make things difficult, Kevin then notices the pages Rin was using to teach Siri. He tells his wife that Rin has completely changed since Vatican Square. Even his tone of voice sounds more mature. Worried, she wonders if he might be possessed by the abyss, but Kevin shakes his head, remembering when he met Master Rin. Back then, Kevin boasted about having reached 3 stars, but Rin ascended to 5 during the war. He believes Rin is a genius, perhaps even destined to reach the level of a sage. After all, he solved in an instant a problem that had puzzled Kevin for years. Kevin concludes that it's time to teach Rin the Ludwig family's secret art, the techniques of the thief mage, forbidden to everyone except its descendants. A magic that steals and assimilates every spell it encounters. 1/3 of the beautiful lands of Cialica belongs to the Ludwig family. Dazzling tulips spread across the land, swaying in the air under the blue sky. Rin lies down on the green field, enjoying the pleasant weather. Concerned about the long journey in search of the truth, he sits down and thinks about the work he needs to do to become a 7-star mage. For him, there's no time to waste, even though he's young. Therefore, he decides to summon the guide. As Rain gets the map to summon the guide, Siri appears behind him. When asked what he was doing, Rain replies that he was about to summon the magic guide because he was very bored. Upon hearing his answer, Siri is confused, so he asks if he should make one for her too. Enthusiastic, she jumps into the air and accepts the offer. Rain observes her excitement and gives her a critical look as she hops around the hill. Reflecting on their conversation, he realizes that even though she is 7 years old, Siri still doesn't speak fluently, and he wonders if there's something wrong with her. After Siri finishes hopping around the field, Rain settles down and begins to write something on the map. He explains that the structure of a magic circle is a multi-leveled square and that several runes are inscribed: pillar, support, point, and ladder. This magic is high level, including 4 different elements, and to master it, one must be a 4-star mage. However, there are only about 10 mages in this country capable of using this magic. As Rain tries to summon the magic guide, blue lights flash on the map. After the light dissipates, blood begins to trickle from his eyes. He can't understand why this is happening, since it requires at least a 4-star mage, and he is already a 5-star mage. However, he's relieved it's just a guidance spell, as some combat magic could have killed him at this rate. Rain wipes the blood from his face, commenting on how terrible his body is and wishing for a guide to appear. Out of nowhere, a snowflake flies toward them and lands on her finger, and it's called a Rudiano. And Rain explains to Siri that it shows a person what they need to learn and how to train. The runic column is used to reveal someone's basic magical capacity, while another column shows proficiency in the use of magic. In short, a Rudiano contains all the best runes for learning, and despite looking ordinary, it's a 4-star magic spell. Rain asks Siri if she likes the Rudiano, and she excitedly confirms she does. After getting her occupied with it, he instructs her to go inside and study. So she skips into the house while playing with the Rudiano. Once Siri is gone, Rain decides to recover his mana first before summoning the second Rudiano. After a while, when Rain summons the other Rudiano for himself, it indicates that his mana is 3024. He finds this very low, even for a beginner mage, and when he checks his magical arithmetic and resistance, they also appear to be 77 and 64, respectively. Seeing his situation, he realizes he is very far from his goal. However, when a bloodline-restricted magic manual appears, he sees Belcidio on it and realizes his body isn't as bad as he expected. Rain's own condition reminds him of a young mage who sought him out when he was traveling with Lista. The mage wanted to prove he was the greatest mage in the Empire and demanded to join the hero's party in Rain's place. To prove him wrong, Rain dueled him and found that his skills were nothing special. However, the young mage's eyes put Rain in a tough spot, as he could see through Rain's every spell and counterattack instantly. Everything starts to make sense to Rain, and he finally understands the power of the Ludwig family's bloodline-restricted magic, through which one can see an opponent's mana flow and tell what magic they're using. When magical abilities are equal, the one who can counterattack better has the advantage. His bloodline-restricted magic manual also includes Belcair's. It is the legendary eye that has only been opened by 3 people in the Empire's magical history. If Belcidio allows one to see through another's magic, Belcair's allows one to steal it. This is why the Ludwig bloodline is called the Thieving Mages, and it gives Rain a goal for his childhood. He knows that if he wants to become a great mage, he will need magical power and resistance, so he begins searching for useful books in his father's office. However, he is caught by his father, Kevin, who asks Rain if he has taken an interest in their family's bloodline magic. Hearing Kevin's voice, Rain is snapped out of his thoughts and wonders if his father was watching him. Before Rain can answer, Kevin acknowledges that it's too early for him, but still asks Rain if he's interested in learning. Rain considers that there's no harm in learning in advance, so he says yes. Upon hearing this, Kevin tells Rain that he will be instructed by his teacher Helen starting that very day. However, Helen will only teach Rain until Kevin returns from the conference, and after that, Kevin will teach him personally. When Rain seems confused about who Helen is, Kevin reminds him that she is his aunt, who teaches at Delighting for students with extraordinary talent for magic and great character. He further emphasizes that she loves Rain deeply and more than anything in the world. As Helen enters the room, Kevin adds that Rain hasn't seen her since he was 6 years old. Hearing her footsteps, Rain turns to the door and finds a woman with a rather unpleasant expression on her face. Suddenly, she looks like an aunt who loves her nephew more than anything. His suspicion grows even more when she glares at him with irritation, before complaining about having come alone just to teach Rain, an unpleasant brat in her words. Rain's eyes widen in horror, as if he's seen a ghost. Helen leans in with her scary personality and pats him on the head before asking if he's ready to start learning under her supervision. Helen Ludwig asks Rain if he knows who she is, to which he responds with her name. She then orders him not to call her aunt, but rather teacher, the great genius. She further states that she can't stand uninterested students who take too long to understand things. Therefore, he shouldn't ask her anything after she has already taught him. Rain's journey into bloodline limit magic begins after this. This magic is not documented anywhere to prevent it from being stolen by other mages. Therefore, one must learn it directly from a family mage who can transmit the knowledge directly into the individual's mind. Helen stands before him and, first things first, demonstrates Sinidius. When she uses it on Rain, he feels something strange and finds the sensation similar to when that young mage used it on him. When Rain expresses how cool he found it, Helen informs him that he needs to be able to process 3 spells simultaneously to use this magic, something a beginner like him can't even do. Accepting the challenge, Rain claims to be able to perform these spells, which irritates her. However, she is impressed by his confidence and hands him a list with some formulas that were the analysis of the magic. As Rain reads the pages given to him, he realizes there is a lot of theory in them. However, if this magic hadn't been restricted by the founder of the Ludwig family, Rain was so skilled that he would have used it too. Seeing Rain concentrating, Helen taunts him, asking if it's too much for him to understand. However, Rain declares that he just needs a little time to absorb it. Helen thinks he's just acting tough and calls him a lost cause, adding that she imagines she'll have to give him private lessons. Even so, Rain remains confident and insists on learning by himself, going to his study desk after thanking her for her help. Helen is impressed by his confidence and, to be sure, asks if he means he no longer needs her help. However, Rain doesn't answer and continues to study, which irritates her even more. She leaves furiously, saying that he can continue studying on his own, though she doubts he'll be able to understand and warns him not to come crying to her later. Rain remains focused on his study material, while Helen sits on the other side, holding a book up to her face. As soon as Rain gets stuck on an equation and stops, she quickly takes his paper and corrects his mistakes, without him having to ask. Rain finds her behavior surprising and wonders if this is how magical education works these days, or if Helen is just testing him. After a few times, she tells Rain to rest and rushes out the door, leaving Rain with a strange feeling about the whole situation. Rain's mother, who was secretly watching them from behind the curtains, walks up to him after Helen leaves. She asks Rain if he also found Helen's behavior strange. When he confirms, adding that it's quite strange, she explains that it's due to Helen's shyness about her own feelings. Despite being eager to teach Rain everything, Helen acts indifferent. So, Rain's mother advises him to ask a lot of questions, even about concepts he already knows. She also tells him about the early days, when Helen would follow her and Kevin everywhere in that adorable way. Rain, on the other hand, wonders if the meaning of adorable has changed over the years when he hears his mother call Helen adorable. After the break, Helen returns to her seat, picks up her book again, and hums. Rain watches her suspiciously when he suddenly notices that she's secretly staring at him, indicating that she's actually looking to help as soon as he struggles. When Helen gets caught looking at him, she averts her gaze and buries her face in her book before going back to sneaking glances like before. Rain found her behavior even more annoying than that of his little sister Ceres, who is only 6 years old. He lets out a tired sigh before following his mother's advice and asking Helen for help, saying he can't understand a certain part. Upon hearing this, Helen is surprised and excitedly starts explaining everything to him. She shows him the easiest way to solve the problems, along with the quickest formula. To humor her, he claims he didn't know about it, even though he did. She scoffs at him for not knowing such basic things and continues to help him. He keeps asking questions and she keeps explaining everything to him, after saying that this is the last question she will help him with. This is how all the classes with Helen go. However, this has greatly helped Rain improve his theoretical and practical learning. On the 10th day of class, Rain feels a pain in his retinas so sharp it feels like his head is going to explode. He feels as if all the blood is rushing to his head, and his eyes turn red. Suddenly a symbol appears in his glowing red eyes, and he starts to see many numbers and equations. All the information begins to stream into his head in the form of mathematical equations, and for a moment, he wonders if he's turning into the creator of the universe. Rain can't fully understand what is happening to him, so he decides to see how his magic will manifest. After this event, he creates a fireball with his magic and sees numbers and equations surrounding it. This makes him realize that this is what must have happened in the eyes of that young mage he met 300 years ago. And through this magic, the young mage would have interpreted Renos's magic into equations. Intrigued by this sudden revelation, he asks Helen if it isn't truly amazing. When she doesn't answer, he turns to look at her and finds an expression of disbelief on her face. As she questions the fact that Rain achieved this magic in just 10 days, he did what she never imagined was possible. Even after years of special training, it took his Aunt Helen 7 long years to learn a powerful spell called Belcitis. Another advanced spell, Bel Kiros, takes about 70 years to master, but Rain surprises everyone by learning Belcitis in just 10 days. Furthermore, Rain can already cast several simple spells simultaneously, even without any prior magical experience. Upon witnessing this, Helen realizes that Rain might be a rare genius. Rain's father remains calm as he watches everything. In fact, he now knows that his son has surpassed him. Later, he turns to Jude, his loyal servant, and gives him the task of writing a letter to Rain's grandfather, the former head of the family, Ludwig. He wants the letter to say that Rain possesses an exceptional talent and needs to be taught by someone superior, to which Jude agrees and promises to write the letter with the utmost respect. With the end of spring, a short and strange summer begins. But this summer doesn't seem normal, as it stretches on indefinitely with dark clouds covering the entire continent. Furthermore, rain falls every day, making everything feel heavier and slower. During this long summer, Rain remains incredibly busy, as during the day he continues to learn advanced family magic from his Aunt Helen. Even with all this going on, Rain finds time to teach Sari the basic steps of magic, patiently guiding her through everything she needs to know. At night, Rain pushes himself even harder, training both his body and his magical power, preparing for the challenges ahead. What Rain learns from Helen and from modern magic books shocks him, because, as someone born 300 years ago, Rain can clearly see how much magic has evolved. Complex spells are now simplified. They are cast more quickly and cause much more damage. Compared to Rain's era, the standards of magic today are unbelievably high. In fact, Rain realizes something important. If he fought a modern 4-star mage now, he might lose. The magical world has grown stronger over time, and at his current level, becoming a 7-star mage seems unattainable. That's why Rain knows he needs more strength and much more knowledge. With a clear goal in mind, Rain finally approaches his father and asks to go to the magic capital, as he believes that if Rain trains and studies there for about 3 years, he will be able to catch up to the new era. As Rain mentally prepares to leave, his sister notices and asks where he is going. Rain explains that his wish is to go to the magic capital called Golden Rose and study magic at Leayton, the most prestigious university in the empire. After that, Rain turns to his father and asks for permission, confident in his request, but his father immediately says no. Furthermore, Rain's little sister, worried and emotional, begs him not to go, to which Rain gently replies that he cannot stay because his goal is too important. However, his father stands firm and reminds Rain that he is still only 10 years old and that it is too early to live far from home. Most children from magical families enroll at Leayton at 16 years old, not before, and waiting until then will not set Rain back. Then, something unexpected happens. His sister mentions a much more important meeting that is about to happen. His father hands him a letter from Rain's grandfather, and even Aunt Helen is shocked to hear this. As Rain processes the news, he realizes what it means. His grandfather is one of only 3 people in his family who have mastered the powerful magic called Belcius, and meeting him is no small matter. as it represents a turning point. Rain's heart races upon hearing the name Skalg Ludvigs, a legendary mage, one of the few to develop Belsius, and he is Rain's grandfather. His father confirms the news with a serious tone, saying that Skalg has agreed to teach Rain Belsius personally, and that this, in itself, is an unbelievable honor. Rain is surprised and asks again, just to make sure he heard correctly. With that, it is decided that before anything else, before going to the magic capital, before Leayton, Rain needs to meet and greet his grandfather. Shortly after, Rain stands before the castle that rises imposingly, ancient and intimidating. In fact, Rain can hardly believe he is about to enter. Next, his father says he has other matters to attend to and asks Rain to go in alone and greet Skalg personally. Inside, Rain finally enters the room where his grandfather awaits him. The old man remains motionless, but as Rain approaches, something changes. In that instant, a strange aura intensifies and Rain instinctively senses something is wrong. A threat, but he does not know what his grandfather is thinking. Perhaps it is a test or something completely different, but at that moment, his first step is clear. Rain prepares to defend himself, because whatever comes, he will block it first. Afterward, Rain will figure out the rest. Upon realizing that Rain has the ability to use Belsius, the grandfather is amazed. Rain wants to use the great power correctly, but the process does not end with obtaining Belsius. The grandfather makes it clear that the user needs to have perfect mastery over it to utilize it properly. Rain can barely calculate a 3-star spell. He still has a long way to go. Rain is determined to reach 5 stars. After hearing that it is not impossible, he asks his grandfather to teach him the way to reach the end of this journey. The grandfather warns him that training under his tutelage will be very difficult. But that is how a person learns correctly. After apologizing to Kevin for the previous difficult encounter, the grandfather welcomes them sincerely, saying they had a drink after confirming Rain's abilities. The grandfather bids Kevin farewell with a wave, arriving at the location with a staff to ask about Rain's skills. The grandfather informs him that he needs to be able to use Belsius as he wishes. Guiding Rain strictly, the grandfather continues to admire his surprising talents. He knows that if he teaches Rain one thing, he will learn not 10, but 100. Even a genius would take a month to understand the material, but Rain learned it in one day. Now all that's left is how to use his eyes and the development of his magical power. His grandfather informs Rain that he will develop faster if he risks his own life. After warning Rain that he would throw fireballs, his grandfather makes it clear that he would die if he couldn't avoid them. Rain struggles to protect himself, but his grandfather keeps yelling for him to hurry. He sees a huge fireball in front of him. Rain thinks about manipulating the opponent with Belsidius and then altering it with Belcarius. He observes triangles and countless numbers before him. Rain realizes he has activated Belcarius. The world transforms into numbers that are now transmitted to Rain's brain, altering the formulas before him as he wishes. Rain tries to find the answer to the equation. The magic grids of the formula are 2 triangles. The designated runic symbols are of the Leayton formula type. It is 17 axes wide and 23 gymes long. Before Rain could fall from the massive explosion, his grandfather catches him in his arms. Rain's condition is under control. His grandfather is happy with the magnificent work. He can't believe Rain obtained Belcarius at only 14 years old. Now Rain just needs to develop his magical power. His grandfather doesn't want to interfere with the life Rain chooses, but wants him to knock on the doors of Leayton when he turns 16. Seeing that Rain isn't interested, his grandfather informs him that if he graduates at the top of his class, he'll have the chance to visit the great mage R. Rain still isn't very curious, but his eyes widen upon hearing about the letter left by the warrior Lista. With his abilities, Rain will be able to read the letter's contents, something no one his age has ever done. Rain is now very interested in learning more about this journey that has just begun. Rain mentions there are about 6 months left before he starts at Leayton, and he plans to travel south to explore and learn more about the world. A confused Kevin says his goodbyes and asks if Rain plans to stay in the magic capital even after his admission process is over. Rain confirms and explains that it's where the world's greatest knowledge is concentrated. He remembers the admission process for Leayton is famous for its difficulty. It takes place at the end of the year, with classes starting in March for those who pass. He wonders if it's really safe to be alone. His skills already stand out, and if he stays on the national road, he assumes danger won't reach him. He heads towards the southern region of the Holy Romano Empire. It is known as the Garum district in Richland. In a medium-sized village, Rain notices numerous inns and taverns, and curiously, everyone is wearing the same traditional hat. He approaches a passerby and asks the reason for the hat. The man smiles, asking if Rain has ever heard of the Rin Merchant Group. Rain raises an eyebrow and repeats the name. The man explains that a long time ago the group's founder was saved by the great mage Rin. Ever since they've worn the hat in gratitude. He adds that their merchant lineage has a rich and lasting legacy. The name sounds vaguely familiar. He might remember more if he heard the group's correct name. He looks back at the man and wonders aloud why the merchant group remains in that village. The man takes a slow sip of his drink and explains that the route to the Solar Road remains blocked. Violent monsters roam nearby and dozens have already disappeared. The local lord instructed them to wait for a hunting squad, although tensions were high with impatient buyers. Rain reflects. The monsters, once common beasts, had their biology distorted by the barbaric creatures of the void who now wield rudimentary magic. He clenches his fist. No matter how many are killed, their numbers never decrease. He turns to the south. The man shouts for him to be careful. A confident Rain knows there's no danger unless a high-level monster appears. He feels gazes watching him, but the stare isn't fixed on him. Perhaps the beasts instinctively recognize the difference in magical presence. He's sure he can handle monsters of this level, and the hunting squad should take care of the rest. As he moves forward, voices reach him from up ahead. He smiles upon spotting Lista and Pride. Their presence is vivid. Lista proposes traveling along the river basin to Turvanopal. Rain notices his shadow talking with them as well. He comments on the two fake warrior groups that previously crossed the continent and fell in the frontline battles. Lista and Pride turn around. Pride mentions that the armies of the Red Dragon and the Yellow Dragon are already on their way to the battlefield. All the notable mercenaries have crossed the sea in search of fame and honor. Kai observes that with the absence of strong fighters, the monsters are now swarming across the land as if they were waiting for this moment. He estimates their threat level barely reaches C or B and emphasizes that now is not the time to waste strength on them. Lista looks at him and gently comments that the world is full of people crying out for help over things that others consider small. She turns to him and murmurs that she hopes he becomes someone who never ignores those people. Then everything dissipates into thin air. Rain lowers his head, his eyes welling up with tears. He remembers that they died 300 years ago. Even so, the pain remains. Rain sits on a nearby log, but the earth stirs. The wind howls. A white beast emerges, giant and imposing. He hurls his enchanted rope, binding the monster with speed and precision. The creature screams, thrashing in defense. Rain warns it that he will release it as long as it never hurts anyone again. The monster's voice falters, pitiful. With a snap of his fingers, Rain shatters it, lifeless pieces crumbling away. He moves on, muttering that, if memory serves, this region lies between the southern border of the Empire and the central lands, the Badentil Mountains. Monsters emerge once more. Rain grits his teeth, muttering that these insignificant creatures are nothing to him. He moves to attack, but arrows whiz past, shattering the beasts before he can reach them. He turns his head toward the source of the attack and, there in the distance, he recognizes them. The two men were one with green hair and the other with gray hair. Both of them reeked of alcohol, which made the green-haired one look like a total drunk. Even when the men asked what was going on, Rain remained frozen, too shocked to answer. Since Rain didn't respond, the green-haired archer warned him about the large number of monsters in the area and said he should have been warned. However, the man with the archer claimed there was no need to warn Rain, since the successors of the great archer were protecting the area. In fact, he was referring to themselves. After watching them for a while, Rain realized the green-haired one couldn't be Kiss. At the same time, he thanked them for their help, unsure of which faction they belonged to. Confused, he wanted to confirm if these were indeed the Badentil Mountains. But instead of answering, the two looked at each other and started laughing. Seeing Rain's confusion, the gray-haired one couldn't resist and explained that the place had been renamed Kiss Lantini a long time ago. Rain understood that Kiss Lantini meant Kiss's Mountains. Kiss had probably settled here after defeating the Abyss, and the people before him were followers of the Archer clan he had founded. It was said that skilled individuals recognized by them traditionally guarded that pass. The fact that these archers were as drunk as could be, just like Kiss used to be, made Rain wonder, because, after all, had Kiss really passed his traits down to this clan too, since drunken archery was still in style. Just as nostalgia hit him, the gray-haired drunkard hugged Rain from behind, saying he'd arrived at the perfect time. Today is a festival day. According to him, today is a day when everyone can drink for free. The guy suggests that Rain learn to appreciate the taste of alcohol if he really wants to consider himself a grown-up, since drinking is the path to reaching the sun and the moon. At the same time, the gray-haired man is eager to leave with Rain, since he's just a kid and might get lost. But the green-haired man reminds his friend not to think he can skip his shift. The man doesn't want to leave the boy alone, so he decides to take him to the village entrance and then come back. On the way, Rain can't help but notice the mess made by the fallen leaves. The man tells Rain they usually sweep the leaves, but there's an unusual amount this year, so even when they clean it up, it feels like a never-ending task. After they continue on their way, the man stops after a while and assures Rain that if he just goes up the wooden steps ahead, you will find a seal, and if you follow the road straight from there, you will reach your destination. Taking a step forward, Rin spots a grave. This even catches Rin's attention. It was the grave of his former ally, but he still wished it wasn't. Rin brought a hand to his chest, and horror was written all over his face. On the contrary, the young man suggests that Rin make a wish there for his journey, and when he notices Rin's confusion, he explains that people don't notice it, but now that no one is around, the grave in front of them is the tomb of Shavs, the archer, and everyone makes a wish there for protection. Rin starts to sweat and begs the young man not to be tricking him, but the young man finds it strange, because why would he do that? At the same time, Rin is very puzzled, because why would someone build a grave in the middle of a mountain like that? Since he is a renowned hero, the young man calls Rin crazy, even doubting that he's a citizen of this land. Furthermore, he explains that Shaves had a comrade named Rin, and that he believed Rin would return someday, even if that day came after Chavez' death. And he believed he would hate his grave if it were surrounded by people, so he asked to be buried there. Rin stood there like a statue. Memories of Kiss flooded his mind, the way Kiss taught him how to write certain words, how he would always touch Rin's hair because he found it annoying, or how he always reeked of alcohol. Rin wonders if Kiss knew they wouldn't meet again, but then reality hits him hard. His face turns pale, and he remembers the promise he made to his allies to come back. The horrific image of Kiss's skeleton appears in Rin's mind, constantly reminding him of how everyone must have waited for him. Rin couldn't take it anymore, and overcome with all his emotions, he started running as far away as he could. As he ran, he tripped on a rock and fell to the ground. He didn't get up or even move. Instead, he grabbed the fallen leaves on the ground and groaned in pain, agony, and frustration. Later, Rin walked on and ended up sitting at the foot of the mountain. He wanted to go back to Kiss's grave to at least say goodbye, apologize for being late, and beg for forgiveness. Guilt was consuming him. He couldn't forget the radiant faces of his companions as he lay there on the mountain cliff and night began to fall. Rin recalled his stories with Kiss. He remembered how incredible Kiss's eyesight was, how he could see a bird flying at night, and how he would hit the target perfectly, even when he was completely drunk. The funny thing was that Kiss could never hit the target accurately when he was sober. Rin even remembered how Kiss used to be quiet and didn't talk much, but his snoring always ruined their nights. As he remembered all of this, Rin became so emotional that he couldn't hold back and began to sob as the bittersweet memories haunted him. One moment he would remember the good times and the next of how his allies cried for him as he was dying. After some time, gathering all the courage he had, he decides to continue his journey and visits Kiss's grave one more time, which was covered in leaves. Standing before the grave, Rin uses his firepower and casts it on the ground, clearing the entire grave and its surroundings. Smiling, Rin apologizes to Kiss, and looking at his grave, he admits it was never out of shyness, but because he always lacked the courage to face him, to meet him and ask for forgiveness. As he walks away from the grave, the memories don't leave him, and he feels only guilt and pain for not being able to keep his promise. Autumn in the south was warm. Under an autumn sky that felt like summer, a dazzling city stretched out before Rin's eyes. The magical city, Golden Rose, and the Leayton University of Magic were located in the heart of Golden Rose. It was a city Rin had admired since his past life, but it didn't live up to his expectations. Rin observes the unfamiliar surroundings and notices a magic book vendor who claims to have books written by the claw magic instructor. Another vendor is offering magical tools to amplify one's magical power. He declares, catching the crowd's attention, that he has a rare item found by a silver rank adventurer in a dungeon. Basically, all the information in this world flows through Golden Rose. Looking around, Rin finds something interesting and kneels in front of some stones. A vendor is selling them for 10 coppers. The price is absurdly low, making Rin remember how he paid at least 80 pieces in his past life. At that moment, the clock tower bell rings. The exam will begin soon. Before he could leave, chaos broke out in the area. People were shouting to catch someone. As he turns around, Rin spots a thief running, and everyone tries to capture him, but no one succeeds because the security there is very poor. Rin doesn't pay it much mind. Thinking about his exam, he turns and bumps into an elderly lady who falls to the ground. Rin apologizes to her, and she seems fine, but the lady demands that he return the item. She is talking about the stones he bought, declaring that they are not for sale. They are a family heirloom, and today, her grandson needs them for the entrance exam. The lady continues to plead with Rin, but he turns away, saying he bought them and that it's not his responsibility to act like Mother Teresa, since he also has an entrance exam to take. But suddenly, he hears a voice advising him to help the lady. Shocked, Rin turns around. It's a figure that appears to be the goddess. Surprised, Rin is alarmed and tells the lady to wait right there, assuring her he will be back. With that, Rin starts searching the crowd to confirm if what he saw was real or just a hallucination. Rin was already busy enough, but the thief was getting in the way. So, he leaps over the crowd to catch him. Seconds later, a girl appears and tells him to step aside, as she will catch the culprit herself. She casts her spell on the thief, and suddenly, 2 sand soldiers appear before him, leaving him completely stunned. She sarcastically praises him for stealing the golden rose, but it's clear this is the end for him, as he is captured by her, Crystal Warden. Rin is completely impressed by her confident attitude and her spell. Rin begins to remember that they had met a few times at the Council of the Great Houses before he regained his memories. She always hit him with the harshest and rudest comments. That's why he calls her a goody two-shoes. Rin concludes that she's around the same age as him because of the school uniform she's wearing. At that moment, the thief launches an attack against Crystal, who impressively dodges twice. Yeah, his attacks make Rin realize that he's also a mage, and his magical ability isn't bad at all. Then, his eyes fixate on the red object in the thief's left hand. In response, Crystal also attacks the thief, daring him to try and block the attack. She casts her 2-star magic at him, which leaves Rin shocked that she was able to do it mentally. The Warden family was also known as the Summoning Mages, just as the Ludwig family was known as the Stealing Mages. The Warden family's specific magic is summoning the earth. Sandstorm golems appear from her powerful spell, and she challenges the thief again. But the thief shouts with confidence, pointing to that red thing in his hand, claiming that as long as he has it, he is invincible, and he attacks her golem. She misreads the spell and thinks it didn't affect her golem, but the golem was actually turned into the thief's puppet by his magic, and now it's going to attack her. At that moment, Rin appears in the middle of the fight, destroys the golem, and sarcastically advises him, saying that in magic, you can't win just by attacking first. As Rin moves forward to cast his spell, the thief immediately orders the golem to counterattack Rin. With all his power, he launches his water attack at the golem to destroy it. Seeing the spell, Crystal asks if he's a water mage. Seconds later, they realize the golem is unaffected by the spell. At this, Crystal comments that her golem can't be destroyed by 1-star magic, as it is 2-star magic itself, even though water is Earth's rival. The thief mocks him, claiming he's all talk and that this is all he can do. With that, he aggressively orders his pet golem to attack and kill them both. Rin casts his spell on the golem again, but Crystal keeps telling him to fall back, as it's not going to work anyway. But Rin keeps casting his magic at the golem and finally manages to defeat it. His impressive skill shocks the thief, leaving him baffled at the ability to repel the golem. Suddenly, a loud crack echoes. Realizing the golem is about to shatter and fall to the ground, Rain immediately pulls Krista away. She shouts angrily, asking how he could just grab her like that. In that instant, Rain casts his dual magic grid. The runes used are Yol and Gwai. Krista, still in shock after using her 1-star magic just seconds ago, wonders how he can cast magic so quickly. The magic of this land is imbued with the characteristics of imprisonment and gravity resistance. The formula to be deciphered is the Preve differentiation method, a distortion of the laws of nature. In seconds, giant tentacles emerge from the ground, grab the enormous golem, and destroy it instantly. After that, Rain confidently walks towards the thief and snatches the red object from his left hand. He asks the thief if that is the artifact, as it looks interesting. The thief asks him to return it, saying it belongs to him, but Rain refuses, since he knows he stole it. Upon examining the object, Rain realizes that stealing control of an opponent's magic is similar to Belsidius, and that there are 2 enchanted magic grids on the jewel, which means it can steal up to 2-star magics. He finds this fascinating, while the thief, still in shock, asks Rain, curious about him and how he can use magic so fast. Rain realizes he won't believe him if he tells him who he really is, so he walks away and hands the red object to its owner, an elderly lady, suggesting she be more careful next time. The lady starts to cry with gratitude to Rain, and the people around begin to chant in his honor. Suddenly, he realizes he's forgetting about the entrance exam, and with that, he runs off at the speed of sound. Left behind, Professor Caroline appears in a dark hood with a sharp, shining sword in her hand, which terrifies the thief. She asks Krista if she now knows she made a mistake because of her arrogance. She suggests that Krista shouldn't have been so nasty as to use a golem, since one of her greatest qualities is precisely the fact that she is so quick to reflect on herself. Krista acknowledges her mistake and promises to be more careful next time. She also comments to the professor that Rain was incredible and asks if she noticed his magic activation speed because it was as fast as Professor Caroline's own. According to the professor, the speed was even faster than hers, which makes Krista curious about what he was, since he didn't seem very powerful when she saw him at the council. Seconds later, a question pops into the professor's mind. If he's here for the council's entrance exam, what is he doing here, since the test already started a while ago? Meanwhile, Rain is desperately rushing. Professor Caroline wonders why Rain arrived so late for the exam, given that the test has been underway for some time. Krista, visibly frustrated, tries to convince Caroline to make an exception, asking if Rain can still take the test, but Professor Caroline sticks firmly to the rules and says they can't just let him in now. Caroline insists, surprised by Krista's concern for another person, as she is usually so strict. Krista further argues that the school should welcome someone like Rain. Caroline admits that Krista has a point. Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, files are being reviewed. Caroline discovers that Rain has no history of awards or notable achievements. In fact, he is known as the disaster of the gods in the Ludwig house, and nothing about him seems impressive until one detail catches her eye. It is revealed that Rain trained for 3 years under the tutelage of Skald Ludwig, a former head of the Mages Alliance and someone who served in the Mages Fortress. Skald is famous for his strict standards. Even being his grandson, Skald wouldn't go easy on Rain, as he is known for unhesitatingly expelling students who don't meet the goals. Professor Caroline asks her assistant Barden to schedule a meeting with the dean, as she wishes to discuss the possibility of accepting one more student, clearly referring to Rain. After this, the dean reflects that he feels as if history is repeating itself. Furthermore, the dean doesn't fully understand why, but talented students often appear together around the same time. Later, the dean starts thinking about some of the most talented students from other elite schools. Wilbert de Holanumon, Lillian de Valfenda, Cayenne de Harriman, Nora de Malebe, and Logan de Shihak. They all enrolled at the same time, representing 5 students from the 8 great schools, each known for their exceptional skills. Din also remembers that director Marquis 8 sent an exceptional child to DeLeon, although she might struggle if left on her own. Furthermore, the tension between the traditional magic families and the 8 schools. The rivalry between them runs deep, and it's usually best not to interfere in student conflicts, but this case might be different. Din knows it's not ideal, but he can't ignore the situation, and plans to tell the teachers to keep an eye on the students, and only intervene if things really get out of hand, and not too often. Later, the Dean of DeLeon, Medelia Page, asks what's going on, to which Caroline shares her thoughts. But she wonders if maybe she's jumping to conclusions and if things aren't as urgent as they seem. Then, Professor Caroline notes that there might be more than one genius from the magic families in the new class. This surprises Medelia, who asks if there's a student they don't know about yet. Caroline doesn't answer directly, but just hints that it's someone she wants to admit through an additional test. Hein Ludwig. Besides, Caroline knows the others won't believe her even if she explains, but she's confident they've already met him during the council meeting. Dean Medelia, used to Caroline's indirect way of speaking, gets straight to the point and says she recognizes that habit. Caroline suggests there's a peaceful way to handle the situation. They can accept Hein without creating conflict. In fact, she's particularly curious to see how Crystal and Hein act under pressure, believing their reactions will reveal a lot, which Medelia agrees with. They'll find out soon enough, as she and Crystal will be studying under Professor Owen, who is famous for his strictness. Then, the conversation takes a different turn, and Caroline reveals something unusual. Hein didn't accept any payment or reward, saying he just wanted to live in peace and read. This sounds strange to Medelia, but Caroline reminds her that strange people often become the best mages, something Medelia herself has said before. However, Medelia also seems worried and suddenly raises a serious question. Could the thief he subdued be connected to the Black Church? Caroline is shocked, but Medelia insists she wouldn't say it unless it were true. Besides, she's already been contacted by the Special Affairs Division, which is on its way to investigate. Feeling uneasy, Medelia warns everyone to prepare, as something dangerous might be on its way. Hein misses the official entrance exam, but the day after the incident, he receives the unexpected news that he's been accepted thanks to the intervention of Professor Caroline, who offers a solution. Furthermore, Caroline suggests he be registered as someone who passed an additional test. Yes, Professor Caroline admits this might cause some talk, since additional tests are usually for those who fail the main one, and this could harm the Ludwig family's reputation. But Hein isn't worried, as he's more apprehensive about waiting a whole year to take the exam again, so he accepts the offer without hesitation. Thus, Hein officially becomes a student at Leayton, the most prestigious university of magic in the Holy Human Empire. Now Hein is at the school gate. In fact, this is the first time Hein has attended a university. In his past life, Hein was trained by the leader of Osiris. In this life, his family taught him everything, and he feels no need for more teachers. But still, there's a reason he's here. He needs to find what someone important to him left behind in this world. She is waiting somewhere on his path, and until they meet again, Hein needs to get stronger, at least strong enough to match the magical abilities he possessed in his previous life. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, "Crystal." She stammers a bit, nervously thanking Hein for helping her earlier, but soon changes her tone, insisting that Crystal Orden could have handled it all by herself. The people around begin to whisper as they realize that Crystal Orden, a highly recommended student, is talking to him. Raina teases her a bit, saying she didn't know she was famous, but Krista tries to play it off. Furthermore, Crystal Warden proudly announces that anyone who doesn't know her must be a spy from the Republic, as she is very famous in her generation. Without hesitation, she declares Ren her rival and says he should feel honored. Ren, on the other hand, finds the idea annoying, and her bold declaration reminds him of someone he knew in a past life, Gisela. Back then, Gisela was a girl he met again at the Magic Tower, and she had a similar, confident energy. She was outgoing and full of pride. Furthermore, she claimed to be the second candidate to become the future leader of her school and demanded that Ren treat her as a senior. Her arrogance was so over the top that Ren still remembers her clearly, even after all this time. Returning to the present, Crystal Warden sees Ren smiling and immediately misinterprets it, accusing him of mocking her and warning that he hasn't seen anything yet. Next, Crystal Warden quickly focuses her magic right there in the hallway. Eager to prove her worth, Ren watches in silence, a little surprised by her recklessness in a place like that, and the way she acts seems very familiar. Then, Ren starts to wonder if Gisela was reborn in this life as Krista, because it's possible and her behavior is very similar. So he considers putting her in her place just to test things out. Meanwhile, another student, Wilbert, watches the scene from a distance. He points out how ridiculous this situation is. On one side is Krista, the top student of the new class. On the other is Ren, the supposed disaster who only got in through a special test. Wilbert wonders if this whole situation isn't just a way to compare two complete opposites. Everyone in the room starts to whisper when Wilbert enters, as he is one of the top students at Merlinon School and the second best student from Leayton Secondary Academy. And everyone already knows that he and Krista don't get along. After that, Wilbert finds the magic demonstration interesting and wonders why Krista suddenly stopped, to which Krista shrugs and says the audience is too boring to continue. Furthermore, Crystal Warden adds that she doesn't want anyone to get hurt by watching her magic too closely and jokes about how thoughtful she is. Wilbert replies sarcastically, feigning gratitude, and then mocks her for being all talk and no action. Finally, Wilbert tells Crystal Warden to be careful with her words, or she might regret it later when she remembers this moment. Furthermore, Crystal Warden reminds Wilbert that he's only the second best, and that acting arrogant doesn't suit him. Crystal Warden also warns him that if he keeps acting like this, he'll ruin his family's reputation. Then Wilbert turns to Ren and pretends he didn't even notice him before. He calls Ren Lord Disaster because he was only accepted through special tests. Next, Wilbert asks if Ren is staring at him because he has something on his face, then with a sarcastic smile, asks if Ren was offended by something he said. Ren remains calm and says he wasn't offended. He just finds Wilbert annoying and wonders why someone like him talks so loudly. After hearing this, Wilbert asks if Ren is really skilled in magic, because only someone confident in their abilities would act that way. Ren warns that if someone wants to mess with him, they need to be really skilled in magic, because he's not someone to be challenged lightly. After seeing Ren's attitude, Wilbert becomes furious. He can't believe that a supposed nobody put him in his place. Crystal Warden finds the whole thing hilarious and mocks Wilbert, saying that being rejected by an unknown student must be humiliating. She calls it real entertainment. At that moment, the instructor shouts for the new students to come in. Krista remembers that she's the class representative and needs to prepare for her speech. She rushes off, but gives Ren one last warning, saying she'll let him off the hook for now because of the time, but that they'll have a real duel soon. Ren wishes she would just forget the whole thing. Meanwhile, other students around them start to whisper, saying that if Crystal Warden really fights Ren, it will be too easy for her. After all, they think he's just the weak student who only got in through special tests. Soon, the entrance ceremony for the new students of Leayton University begins. Everyone gathers and the formal event starts. Heen grows impatient and mutters for the speeches to end. Then the crowd is instructed to applaud the most powerful mage in the Empire, Medelia Page. She is not only the chancellor of the university, but also the leader of the Mages Alliance and a direct descendant of a Meta Page. The legendary founder of magic and her purple hair clearly mark her lineage. Medelia introduces herself and welcomes the 233 new students to the school. However, she immediately warns them that only half of them will make it to the second year. The rest may have to repeat the year or be expelled, setting a serious and rigorous tone for what is to come. Furthermore, Medelia Page reminds them that of the 117 students who survived the first year, fewer than 60 will reach the third, and of those, only about half will graduate. This means that fewer than 30 students complete their studies at Leayton each year. Medelia reminds everyone that Leayton is not just any magic school. It is a place where only the strongest and most dedicated can survive. The school's goal is to polish the students like rough stones and turn them into shining jewels. To do this, they subject them to constant trials, battles, and rigorous lessons. It is no place for the weak or lazy. Those who cannot keep up will not be able to graduate. In the end, Medelia Page hopes to see them again in 3 years, but until then, she will not welcome them as the chancellor, but as a veteran mage. Her words have a profound yet inspiring impact on Ren. Meanwhile, from a balcony above, Professor Caroline and Professor Owen watch the new students. Caroline comments on the passion the students are showing, but Owen is unimpressed and says he had high expectations after hearing this class was special. But now all he sees are fools who seem to lack the brains for real magic. In his opinion, most of them will fail. Holding a piece of paper, Ren stands in front of the campus, the university building, the Dragon's Sleep Hall. He gazes at the imposing building, wondering if that's a place he'll ever reach. With that, he enters, walking down the corridor until he finds the classroom. Upon arriving, he realizes the room is empty, and apparently, he is the first one there. Ren sits in a chair near the window and enjoys the view. His attention is drawn away by a voice that fills the room. It's Krista, standing in front of him, saying she's looking forward to working with him. When Ren turns to Krista, his smile turns to shock, and he puts a hand to his face, as fate can be relentless. Before he could process anything, Krista boasts that Ren will have to compete with the top student from the entrance exam, Krista Warden. While he was lamenting his situation, Gertrude Panton appears from behind and explains that what Krista meant was she was very happy to sit next to him. Without hesitation, Krista agrees that she is more than satisfied, as she'll be able to teach that arrogant brat, Ren, a lesson. Ren hides his face in his hands at her pettiness. At that moment, Hubert arrives and is amused to see the Panton family there, admitting he's envious of those nobles from magical families who control several subordinate families. He indirectly mocks Krista for being rude and mannerless, always pointing the finger at others. Gertrude Panton, always looking out for the ladies, defends Krista by saying it's her charm that Hubert can't understand. Furthermore, Gertrude taunts Hubert, saying that Krista is very charming, at least more so than someone who only cares about their appearance. The argument heats up. Krista tries to calm things down while Ren starts to feel sick, wondering why these idiots are fighting like cats and dogs. And he instantly remembers when Pride asked him if he had ever wanted to go to school. At the time, Ren denied wanting to go, since he was already a 4-star mage. So, what else would he learn at school besides wasting time? However, Pride thought it was foolish of Ren to have that mindset, since school isn't just a place to learn new things, but also to meet people.